Yvette Price found the second phone by accident. Rain hammered the roof of Travis's Range Rover while she searched under the passenger seat for her lipstick. Her fingers brushed against cold metal instead. A black iPhone, hidden deep enough that only someone looking for nothing would ever find it. Then the screen lit up. Sabrina, did your wife finally stop asking questions? Yvette stopped breathing. Inside the house, Travis was laughing while pouring himself bourbon like an innocent man, like a faithful husband. She stared at the phone for a long time before sliding it carefully back into place. That was the moment she decided something terrifying. For the next 8 months, Travis would never know she knew. And if you found something like that hidden in the person you loved most, would you confront them immediately? Or would you stay silent long enough to see who they really are? The next morning, Yvette Price woke up beside a man she suddenly realized she no longer recognized. Travis slept on his stomach, one arm thrown across the king-sized bed, like he owned every inch of it. Even asleep, he looked composed, expensive, untouchable. The pale gray light coming through the floor-to-ceiling windows painted sharp lines across his face, softening the coldness that usually lived there now. For a moment, she just stared at him. 10 years. 10 years of marriage. 10 years of defending him, believing him, reshaping herself around his moods like water trying to fit inside broken glass. And somewhere during those years, Yvette had slowly disappeared. The rain from the night before still tapped softly against the windows. Her chest felt hollow from lack of sleep. She hadn't cried again after finding the phone. That scared her more than tears would have. Because Yvette had always been a crier. When her father died unexpectedly at 52, she cried so hard she fainted in the hospital bathroom. When she lost the baby at 14 weeks, she cried into Travis's chest until her throat bled raw. When Travis started becoming colder 2 years ago, she cried silently in the shower so he wouldn't hear her and call her dramatic again. But last night, nothing. Just silence. Cold, terrifying silence. Travis groaned softly and rolled toward her. What time is it, 6:30? You're up early. I couldn't sleep. That was all. No concern, no curiosity, no reaching for her. He sat up slowly, grabbing his phone from the nightstand first thing. Not her hand, not her face. His phone. Yvette watched his eyes scan the screen. Then something almost invisible happened. Relief. Tiny. Quick. But there. As if he'd been afraid someone had seen something. Her stomach twisted violently. He looked over at her. You okay? Yvette forced a small smile so natural it frightened even her. Yeah. Just tired. Travis relaxed instantly. That hurt too, because it meant he believed her that easily. He climbed out of bed and disappeared into the bathroom. Seconds later, the shower turned on. Yvette sat frozen beneath the blankets, listening to the water hit tile. Then she looked toward the window overlooking their backyard. Their house sat in one of the wealthiest neighborhoods in Connecticut. Massive homes hidden behind trees and private gates. The kind of place where every lawn looked airbrushed and every marriage looked perfect from the outside. Especially theirs. People loved Travis Price, senior corporate attorney, charming speaker, Ivy League educated, sharp jawline, tailored suits, quiet confidence. At charity galas, women stared at him openly. At dinner parties, men tried to impress him. And Yvette. Yvette had become an accessory to his success. Beautiful wife. Elegant hostess, former pediatric nurse who chose family over career. That was how people described her now, as if her entire identity fit neatly inside a sentence about sacrifice. The truth was more complicated. Yvette had loved nursing. She loved the chaos of children's hospitals, the tiny socks, the bedtime cartoons playing in waiting rooms at 2 a.m., the feeling that she mattered. But Travis hated her schedule. "You're exhausting yourself," he used to say. "You don't need to work. It's not like my salary isn't enough." At first it sounded loving, protective. Then slowly it became expectation, then pressure, then resentment whenever she mentioned going back. Now, 3 years later, Travis introduced her at parties with the same amused smile every time. Yvette used to be a nurse before she retired herself, like she had willingly stepped out of her own life. The bathroom door opened in a cloud of steam. Travis walked out in a towel, already checking emails. "Mom wants us there Sunday?" Yvette blinked. "For dinner, she's inviting the Holloways too." Of course she was. Diane Price loved wealthy company almost as much as she loved criticizing Yvette. "Sounds fun," Yvette said softly. Travis barely looked at her. "Wear something nice this time. Something nice this time." Another small cut. Another tiny humiliation disguised as casual conversation. He disappeared into the closet while Yvette stared down at her wedding ring. She remembered when Travis used to kiss her hand every morning. Back when they lived in a tiny apartment above a bakery in Boston during law school. Back when he'd stay awake with her after double shifts at the hospital. Back when he looked at her like she was the safest place in the world. Sometimes she wondered when exactly that version of him died. Or maybe worse. Maybe that version had never existed at all. By 8:30, Travis was dressed in a navy Tom Ford suit, standing in the kitchen scrolling through emails while Yvette poured coffee. "You heading out early?" she asked. "Board meeting." He didn't look up. Yvette handed him his mug carefully. Their fingers brushed briefly. Nothing. No spark. No warmth. Just skin touching skin. "You're quiet today," Travis said finally. "I'm fine." Good. The word landed like a door closing. Then his phone buzzed. Not the hidden phone. His regular one. But Yvette watched his expression change anyway. Faster breathing, slight smile. He angled the screen away automatically, instinctively, guiltily. And suddenly, Yvette noticed something horrifying. This wasn't new behavior. She had seen this for months, maybe longer. She had simply trusted him enough not to connect the pieces. "I'll be late tonight," Travis said. "You said that yesterday, too." His eyes lifted sharply. For one strange second, the air changed. Dangerous. Then he smirked faintly. Keeping score now, Yvette forced another smile. "No." He grabbed his keys from the marble counter. Those keys. The same keys that unlocked the Range Rover, the same car hiding another life beneath its passenger seat. Travis walked toward her and kissed her forehead absently. A performance. That was what it felt like now. Not affection, muscle memory. "You worry too much," he murmured. Then he left. The front door shut behind him. A moment later, Yvette heard the engine start. She walked slowly toward the massive front windows overlooking the driveway, and there he was, her husband, the man who once held her while she buried their unborn child, the man who promised he would never lie to her, driving away with a second phone hidden in his car. Yvette wrapped her arms around herself tightly as the SUV disappeared through the gates. Then her eyes drifted toward the empty coffee mug he'd left behind, lipstick stain on the rim. Her lipstick, tiny evidence she still existed in his life at all. But for the first time in years, another thought appeared beneath the grief. Not panic, not desperation, a question. What if Travis wasn't the center of her world anymore? The thought scared her so badly she almost pushed it away. Almost. Then her own phone buzzed suddenly on the kitchen island. Unknown number. Yvette hesitated before opening the message. Her blood turned to ice instantly. A photo. Travis sitting at a restaurant table. Across from him sat a stunning brunette woman, laughing at something he'd said. Timestamp 30 minutes ago. Below the photo was one sentence. You deserve to know the truth about your husband. Yvette stared at the photo until the screen dimmed in her hand. Travis sat across from the brunette like he belonged there, like he belonged to her. The woman was beautiful in a sharp, polished kind of way. Dark silk blouse, gold earrings, long chestnut hair falling over one shoulder. The kind of woman who looked expensive even in a blurry photograph. And Travis was smiling. Not the polite corporate smile he gave at charity events. Not the tired half smile he gave Yvette lately when he remembered he was supposed to act married. This smile was alive, intimate, hungry. Yvette's stomach twisted so violently she had to grip the kitchen counter to stay standing. For several seconds she forgot how to breathe. Then another message appeared beneath the photo. Her name is Sabrina Cole. Yvette's thumb hovered over the keyboard. Who is this? 3 dots appeared instantly. Someone who got tired of watching him lie to you. Then the number disappeared offline. Yvette stood motionless in the massive white kitchen while silence swallowed the room whole. The refrigerator hummed softly. Rain tapped against the windows. Somewhere upstairs, the bedroom television Travis forgot to turn off murmured faintly to itself. Normal sounds. Ordinary sounds. But nothing in Yvette's life felt ordinary anymore. She zoomed in on the photo slowly. Travis still wore the same navy suit from earlier, the same suit he'd worn while kissing her forehead goodbye like a devoted husband. And Sabrina? Sabrina was leaning forward with her hand resting near his wrist. Comfortable. Familiar. Like this wasn't new. Yvette suddenly remembered something Travis had said 3 months ago after a corporate holiday party. Sabrina's brilliant. Honestly, she works circles around most people in that company. At the time, Yvette hadn't thought twice about it. Now she remembered the exact way he'd smiled when he said her name. Her chest tightened. How many warnings had she ignored because she trusted him? How many times had her intuition whispered while she silenced it to protect the marriage? She set the phone down carefully and walked upstairs in a daze. The master bedroom looked untouched except for Travis's side of the closet hanging open slightly. Rows of tailored suits lined perfectly beside polished leather shoes. Yvette stared at them for a long moment. Then she opened the closet wider. At first nothing seemed unusual. Then she noticed it. A scent. Not hers. Vanilla and jasmine. Subtle. Feminine. Her throat closed instantly. Yvette reached toward one of Travis's jackets hanging near the back. The perfume smell clung to the fabric unmistakably, not strong enough to notice casually, but once you knew impossible to ignore. She pressed the sleeve against her nose, and suddenly tears burned her eyes for the first time since finding the second phone. Not because he cheated, not even because he lied, but because another woman had existed close enough to leave traces on his clothes while Yvette still folded them lovingly every week. That level of humiliation felt almost impossible to survive. A memory surfaced violently. 3 weeks earlier, Yvette standing in this same bedroom asking softly, "Do you still love me?" Travis barely looking up from his laptop. "Why do you ask questions like that? Because you feel far away. I'm tired, Yvette." Not everything is emotional warfare. At the time she apologized. Now she wanted to scream. Her phone buzzed again downstairs. Yvette wiped her face quickly and went back down. Unknown number again? 1 sentence. Check his Amex statements. Then nothing. Yvette stared at the text. Her heart pounded so loudly she could hear it. She shouldn't. A decent wife wouldn't invade privacy. A decent marriage required trust. But another voice inside her finally whispered something dangerous. A decent husband doesn't hide second phones. That voice changed everything. Yvette opened Travis's home office slowly that afternoon. The room smelled like cedar wood and espresso. Floor-to-ceiling shelves lined with legal books Travis rarely touched anymore because assistants handled most of the real work now. His desk sat perfectly organized. Too organized, like a man terrified of losing control. Yvette's pulse shook while she opened the drawer containing financial files. At first, she found nothing unusual. Mortgage documents, investment portfolios, tax records. Then she found the American Express statements, and suddenly her entire body went cold. Nobu, Manhattan, the Peninsula, Chicago, a spa resort in Napa Valley, thousands of dollars, repeated charges, private dining reservations for 2 luxury hotel suites, jewelry purchases Yvette had never received. The dates stretched back nearly a year. A year? One entire year of deception. Yvette sat slowly in Travis's leather office chair because her legs no longer worked properly. A year of lies while she defended him to everyone. A year while she blamed stress for his distance. A year while she sat alone in fertility appointments because Travis was too busy. Her vision blurred. Then she noticed another charge. Cape Cod. Yvette froze. No. Her hands started trembling violently now. Please no. She grabbed another statement, then another. And there it was, the exact weekend, their beach house, the house her father left her before he died. The same house where Travis proposed to her barefoot on the sand 11 years ago. The same house where she painted the nursery walls after getting pregnant. The same house where she locked herself in the bathroom and miscarried while Travis drove her to the emergency room sobbing. He took Sabrina there. Yvette pressed her hand against her mouth as a broken sound escaped her throat. That finally shattered her. Not the affair, not the lies. That. Because some places inside a marriage are sacred, and Travis had handed one of theirs to another woman. Her phone rang suddenly. Travis. Yvette inhaled sharply before answering. Hey, she said softly. Hey. His voice sounded distracted. You okay? The question almost made her laugh. I'm fine. You sound weird. I'm tired. A pause. Then Travis sighed impatiently. Look, dinner tonight got moved later. Of course it did. Okay. You don't mind, right mind. Yvette looked down at the hotel charges in front of her. At the evidence of another life. No, she whispered. I don't mind. Good. Silence stretched between them. Then Travis spoke again carefully. Yvette. Yes. You'd tell me if something was wrong? Right. Her heartbeat stopped. For one terrifying second, she wondered if he somehow knew. If he could hear the truth breathing on the other end of the line. Then she remembered something else. Travis only became observant when his own comfort felt threatened. Yvette forced warmth into her voice. Of course I would. He relaxed instantly. All right. Love you. The words hit her like a slap. Love you. He said them so easily, like breathing, like lying. Yvette closed her eyes slowly. Love you too, she whispered back. Because she wasn't ready yet. Not today. Maybe not tomorrow either. She hung up and sat alone in his office while late afternoon sunlight spilled across the floor. Then quietly, carefully, Yvette Price began taking pictures of everything. Every statement, every charge, every receipt. The grief inside her was still enormous. But beneath it now, something colder had started growing. Awareness. And awareness was dangerous, especially in women men thought they had already broken. That night, Travis came home close to midnight smelling like expensive whiskey and Sabrina's perfume. Yvette pretended to be asleep when he slipped into bed beside her, but sometime around 2 in the morning, Travis's hidden phone buzzed again inside the garage downstairs. And this time, Yvette already knew exactly who it was. Sunday dinner at Diane Price's house always felt like attending a performance where Yvette had been assigned the role of disappointment. The mansion sat on a hill overlooking the Long Island Sound, all white stone and towering windows designed to impress people before they even walked inside. Diane loved things that looked expensive from a distance, especially families. Yvette stood in front of the hallway mirror, adjusting the sleeves of her cream-colored dress while Travis checked his reflection beside her. "You're wearing that?" he asked casually. Yvette looked down at herself. "What's wrong with it?" "Nothing." He fixed his cufflinks. "It's just a little plain. Plain." The word landed softly, but Yvette still felt it cut. Almost everything Travis said to her lately came wrapped in fake politeness. Tiny insults hidden beneath reasonable tones, the kind that made her question whether she was overreacting for feeling hurt. That was his favorite kind of cruelty, the kind with plausible deniability. "You look beautiful," she said quietly instead. Travis glanced at her reflection. For one brief second, something unreadable crossed his face. Guilt, maybe, or annoyance that she was still kind to him after all the ways he'd failed her. Then it disappeared. "You ready?" he asked. Yvette nodded. The drive there was silent except for soft jazz playing through the speakers. Travis kept checking his phone at red lights. Smiling faintly sometimes, not at her, never at her anymore. Yvette watched the passing Connecticut coastline blur beyond the windows, while her chest slowly hardened into something unfamiliar. Not numbness, clarity. That was worse, because clarity made every small humiliation impossible to ignore now. The way Travis never touched her casually anymore. The way conversations between them felt like business meetings. The way he only complimented her in public. The way he sighed whenever she cried. Once you saw emotional neglect clearly, you could never unsee it again. Diane opened the front door before they even rang the bell. "There you are." She kissed Travis immediately. Yvette got a quick air kiss near her cheek. "Dinner's almost ruined," Diane announced dramatically. Garrett burned the asparagus again. From the dining room, Yvette Price yelled, "It was one time Travis laughed." Yvette smiled politely. The house smelled like rosemary chicken and expensive candles. Classical music floated softly through hidden speakers while wealthy conversation echoed from the dining room. The Holloways were already there. Richard Holloway owned 3 private equity firms and talked like every sentence should be quoted in Forbes. His wife Celeste looked permanently Botoxed into mild surprise. They greeted Travis warmly. Yvette got the usual sympathetic smile reserved for women people assumed had easier lives than their own. "You look thin," Diane commented immediately as they sat down. Yvette blinked. "I do well." Diane sipped wine. Stress shows on women eventually. Travis didn't say a word. Not one. Yvette focused on unfolding her napkin carefully. She used to wonder why Travis never defended her. Now she understood something uglier. He agreed with them. Dinner began with the usual conversations about investments, politics, and social events. Travis dominated most discussions effortlessly. Charming, intelligent, controlled. Watching him in public felt surreal now. This man lied beautifully. At one point, Richard laughed and said, "Travis, you married well. Yvette keeps you human." Everyone chuckled softly. Except Diane. "She certainly keeps him domesticated," Diane corrected. The table laughed harder. Yvette smiled tightly even while heat crept up her neck. Then Diane turned toward her directly. "So Yvette, any plans to ever work again?" The question was sharp beneath its sugary tone. Travis cut into his steak calmly. Yvette swallowed. "I've thought about returning to nursing part-time." Diane's eyebrows lifted. Oh, just one word. But somehow it carried judgment, surprise, and disapproval all at once. Travis finally spoke. She gets restless sometimes. Sometimes, as if her entire identity existed as a passing inconvenience. Yvette stared at him. He still wouldn't meet her eyes. Garrett looked uncomfortable suddenly. Yvette was amazing at her job. Of course she was, Diane said lightly, but Travis worked incredibly hard to give her the luxury of not needing one. Luxury? Yvette almost laughed. Loneliness wrapped in marble countertops was still loneliness. Celeste Holloway leaned forward sympathetically. Honestly, though, men like Travis need ambitious women around them constantly. Keeps life exciting. Diane smirked behind her wine glass. There are many kinds of excitement. The table went quiet for half a second. Tiny, barely noticeable. But Yvette felt it instantly. They know. Maybe not details, maybe not everything, but enough. Enough to make jokes, enough to look at her with pity. Her appetite disappeared completely. Later, while clearing plates in the kitchen, Yvette stood silently beside the sink rinsing dishes. Behind her, Diane lowered her voice near Celeste. If she were smarter, he wouldn't need constant stimulation elsewhere. The world stopped. Yvette's hand froze beneath the running water. Celeste murmured something too quiet to hear. Diane sighed dramatically. Yvette's sweet, but honestly, she's emotionally exhausting. Travis has carried that marriage for years. Yvette felt something inside her crack open slowly. Not heartbreak, not even rage. Recognition. This entire family had built a version of her together. Fragile, dependent, overly emotional, a burden. And Travis had helped them do it. The realization made her physically dizzy. She dried her hands carefully before turning around. Diane smiled instantly like nothing had happened. "Can you bring the dessert plates, sweetheart, sweetheart?" Yvette stared at her mother-in-law for one long second. Then she smiled back. Of course. That smile scared her because it wasn't submissive anymore. It was controlled, intentional. The rest of dinner passed in a blur of wine glasses and fake laughter. At one point, Travis rested his hand briefly on Yvette's knee beneath the table while telling a story. Anyone watching would think it was affection. Yvette realized something horrifying. Her marriage had become theater long before she found the second phone, and she had been the only audience member who thought it was real. On the drive home, Travis loosened his tie with a sigh. My mother was annoying tonight. Yvette stared out the window. You didn't seem bothered. She means well. Yvette actually turned toward him then. She said if I were smarter, you wouldn't need stimulation elsewhere. Silence filled the car instantly. Travis gripped the steering wheel tighter. She was joking. Was she, "You're being sensitive again"? There it was. That word, again. Like her pain existed only to inconvenience him. Yvette looked at him carefully in the dark. How long have you been telling people I'm unstable? Travis's head snapped toward her briefly. What Garrett said, you complain about me constantly. That's not what he said. You tell people I'm emotional, difficult, exhausting. You are emotional. The cruelty of how casually he said it almost stole her breath. Yvette laughed softly in disbelief. I lost a baby Travis. His jaw tightened immediately. That's not fair. No, her voice trembled now. You made me feel insane for grieving too long. I supported you. You disappeared. Silence exploded between them. The Range Rover cut through dark Connecticut roads while tension suffocated the air inside the vehicle. Finally, Travis spoke coldly. You're not starting drama because my mother hurt your feelings, are you? Yvette stared at him. Really stared at him. And suddenly she understood something terrifying. Travis didn't just betray her physically. He had been slowly dismantling her confidence for years, making her smaller, quieter, easier to control. The affair was only the symptom. The real betrayal ran much deeper. When they got home, Travis killed the engine and looked at her sharply. What? Yvette hadn't realized she was staring. "You know what's funny?" she said softly. "What?" "For years I thought I was hard to love." Something flickered across his face. Not remorse, fear, tiny, fast, but real. Yvette opened the passenger door slowly. Then she looked back at him one last time. But maybe she whispered I was just standing too close to someone cruel, and for the first time in years, Travis Price had absolutely nothing to say. Yvette couldn't sleep after the fight in the car. Not that Travis seemed affected by it. He had gone upstairs, loosened his tie, poured himself bourbon, and climbed into bed without apologizing, without revisiting the conversation, without asking why his wife looked like someone had cracked her ribs open and left her bleeding quietly in the dark. That was Travis's specialty. Emotional abandonment disguised as composure. Around 1 in the morning, Yvette lay awake staring at the ceiling while the city lights from the distant shoreline flickered faintly through their bedroom windows. Beside her, Travis slept peacefully. How terrifying, she thought, that some people could destroy you and still rest comfortably beside your pain. She turned her head slowly toward him. There had been a time when she would have died before betraying this man. A time when she defended him against everyone, her friends, her sister, even herself, especially herself. Every red flag had become something she explained away. He's stressed, he's under pressure, he's grieving too. But now she understood something women often realized far too late. Love could become a prison if you were the only one protecting it. Yvette slipped carefully out of bed. The hardwood floors felt cold beneath her bare feet as she walked downstairs toward the kitchen. Moonlight spilled across the marble countertops, turning the house silver and ghost-like. She opened her laptop slowly. Then she began searching. At first, she didn't even know exactly what she was looking for. Maybe proof, maybe punishment, maybe permission to finally stop doubting herself. She typed Sabrina Cole, Connecticut. Instantly, dozens of results appeared. Corporate profiles, charity gala photos, business magazine articles. And there she was, Sabrina Cole, 30 years old, senior strategic consultant for Blackwell Holdings, sharp smile, Ivy League graduate, rising executive star. Beautiful, painfully beautiful. Yvette clicked one article after another while her chest tightened. Sabrina speaking on a panel beside Travis 6 months earlier. Sabrina at a company retreat in Aspen. Sabrina standing beside Travis at a fundraising dinner. Too close, always too close. And suddenly Yvette realized something horrifying. The affair hadn't been hidden very well. She had simply trusted him too completely to see it. A bitter laugh escaped her throat. God, how humiliating! Her eyes drifted lower on Sabrina's profile. Then she froze. Cole Strategic Consulting, LLC, the same company name from the financial statements. Yvette's heartbeat sped up instantly. She opened Travis's online financial portal again, using the password she'd memorized years ago for tax season. Then she searched the transactions directly. Cole Strategic Consulting, LLC. Pages of transfers appeared. Not business expenses, not reimbursements. Large payments. Consistent payments. Some labeled consulting. Others completely blank. Her stomach dropped. Travis wasn't just cheating. He was moving money. Yvette leaned back slowly in the kitchen chair, suddenly cold all over. If Travis was hiding assets, then he was planning something, and deep down she already knew what. Protection, preparation, an exit strategy. The realization hit harder than the affair itself, because cheating could still be explained away by weakness, ego, lust, midlife crisis, but financial manipulation that required planning, calculation, intent. Yvette opened another statement with trembling hands. More hidden transfers, private accounts, investment movements she had never seen before. For years, Travis had insisted handling finances reduced stress for her. You shouldn't worry about numbers, he used to say gently. Now she understood what he really meant. Don't look too closely. Tears burned her eyes again, not because she felt weak, because she finally understood how deliberately she had been underestimated. Her phone buzzed suddenly. Unknown number. Again. Yvette hesitated before opening the text. Be careful. He thinks he's smarter than everyone. No signature, no explanation. Yvette typed quickly. Who are you? This time? No response came. She stared at the screen for a long moment before locking the phone. Then another thought entered her mind. A terrifying one. What if Travis decided to leave first? The idea made her chest tighten violently, not because she wanted him anymore, but because she suddenly saw the danger clearly. Travis controlled nearly everything, the accounts, the investments, the house paperwork. If he painted her as emotionally unstable, if he hid assets successfully, if he blindsided her legally, Yvette could lose everything while still being portrayed as the irrational wife who couldn't handle the marriage failing. Her breathing became uneven. No, she wouldn't let that happen. Not anymore. For the first time in months, something stronger than grief appeared inside her. Instinct. Survival. She opened a new browser tab and searched top divorce attorneys' New York high net worth cases. One name appeared repeatedly. Naomi Bennett, Manhattan family law specialist, ruthless negotiator, known for dismantling financial deception during divorces involving corporate executives. Yvette stared at Naomi's photo. Elegant silver blonde hair, sharp eyes, calm expression that somehow looked both expensive and dangerous. The consultation fee alone made Yvette wince. Then she remembered the hidden accounts and clicked anyway. By 10 the next morning, Yvette sat inside Naomi Bennett's office overlooking Central Park. The room smelled faintly of espresso and leather-bound books. Every surface looked immaculate. Naomi herself looked even sharper in person. Tailored black suit, diamond studs, controlled posture. The kind of woman men underestimated once. Only once. Naomi reviewed the financial documents silently while Yvette sat across from her, twisting her wedding ring nervously. Finally, Naomi looked up. How long have you suspected infidelity? A few days. And the financial irregularities last night? Naomi nodded slowly. Your husband is preparing. The words landed heavily. Yvette swallowed hard. Preparing for divorce or asset protection before one. Naomi folded her hands neatly. Men like Travis usually assume their wives won't notice until it's too late. Yvette looked down at her lap. He thinks I'm emotional. Naomi gave the faintest smile. That's useful. Yvette blinked. Useful, yes. Naomi leaned back slightly. Arrogant men make mistakes when they underestimate quiet women. Something shifted inside Yvette hearing that. Quiet women. Not weak women. Quiet women. Naomi continued reviewing the documents. These transfers concern me. Especially the LLC. You think it's illegal, I think it's dishonest. Naomi met her eyes directly, and dishonesty becomes expensive in court. For the first time since finding the second phone, Yvette felt something unfamiliar. Hope. Small, fragile, but real. What do I do? She whispered. Naomi's expression sharpened immediately. You do absolutely nothing emotionally reactive. Yvette frowned slightly. No confrontation, no accusations, no dramatic speeches, no informing the other woman you exist. Naomi slid the papers neatly together. You smile, you observe, you gather evidence. Yvette stared at her. How long is necessary? The room fell quiet. Then Naomi asked carefully, Can you pretend everything is normal? Yvette thought about Travis kissing her forehead while lying to her, about Diane calling her weak, about Sabrina walking through her beach house. Something cold settled fully into place inside her chest. Yes, she said softly. Naomi studied her for a moment, then she nodded once. Good. She opened a folder and handed Yvette a business card. Victor Hale, forensic accountant. He'll help trace everything your husband tried to bury. Yvette took the card carefully. Her fingers no longer trembled, and that frightened her a little, because grief had started changing shape, turning harder, sharper, strategic. As the meeting ended, Naomi walked her toward the office door. Then she paused. One more thing. Yvette turned back. Naomi's eyes held hers steadily. Men like Travis usually believe control is love. The moment they feel control slipping, she gave a slight shrug. That's when they become dangerous. A chill ran through Yvette instantly. Not physical danger, something worse. Psychological warfare, gaslighting, manipulation, reputation destruction. Travis already had a head start. But as Yvette stepped into the Manhattan sunlight holding Naomi's card tightly in her hand, she realized something important for the very first time. So did she. For the next several weeks, Yvette Price became two different women. One smiled over candlelit dinners while Travis checked emails beside her. The other quietly learned how to survive him. The performance exhausted her. Every morning she kissed Travis goodbye like she still trusted him. Every night she pretended not to notice the distance in his eyes or the secret satisfaction in the way he guarded his phone. Sometimes he came home smelling like Sabrina's perfume. Sometimes he came home too tired to even fake affection. And somehow the second version hurt worse, because neglect was colder than cruelty. Cruelty at least acknowledged your existence, but indifference made you feel invisible. Yvette started therapy again without telling Travis. Wednesday mornings, 11 o'clock. A discreet office 30 minutes from downtown Greenwich. Dr. Rebecca Klein never pushed too hard. That was what Yvette liked about her. One rainy morning, Dr. Klein sat across from her quietly and asked, What scares you most right now? Now Yvette stared down at the untouched tea in her hands. That maybe he never really loved me? Dr. Klein tilted her head slightly, and if that were true, Yvette swallowed hard. Then I wasted 10 years of my life. The words cracked something open inside her chest. Dr. Klein's voice remained calm. Or maybe you spent 10 years loving sincerely. There's a difference. Yvette looked up slowly. No one had ever framed it that way before. Not failure, not stupidity. Love. Real love. Even if it had been given to the wrong person, that thought stayed with her afterward. So did another. Maybe Travis's inability to love properly wasn't proof Yvette was unlovable. Maybe it was proof of who he was. That realization felt like air returning to drowning lungs. Meanwhile, Naomi Bennett moved fast. Victor Hale, the forensic accountant, was exactly the kind of man Yvette expected Naomi to work with. Quiet. Meticulous. Mid-40s. The kind of person who noticed details before most people realized details existed. He met Yvette at a private coffee shop in Manhattan. No offense, Victor said gently while reviewing documents, but your husband isn't nearly as smart as he thinks he is. Yvette almost smiled. Almost. Victor highlighted multiple transfers between Travis's accounts and Sabrina's consulting company. He's funneling money slowly enough to avoid attention, Victor explained, but he got careless recently. Careless, how Victor slid another page toward her. He started moving larger amounts. Yvette stared at the numbers. Her stomach tightened instantly. That much Victor nodded. People get sloppy when emotions get involved. Emotions? Funny. Travis always accused Yvette of being ruled by emotion, yet he was the one risking financial fraud for an affair. Victor leaned back slightly. You should prepare yourself. For what? For the possibility that your husband intended to leave eventually. The words still hurt even now. Yvette looked out the cafe window toward the Manhattan traffic. I think part of me already knew. Victor studied her carefully for a second before speaking again. The women who survive men like Travis usually have one thing in common. What's that? They stop asking for honesty from people committed to lying. Silence settled heavily between them, because deep down, Yvette understood something painful. She had spent years trying to communicate her way into being loved correctly, as if explaining her hurt better would suddenly give Travis empathy. But some people only changed when consequences arrived, and consequences were finally coming, slowly, carefully, one piece at a time. A month later, Yvette returned to St. Matthew's Children's Hospital for the first time in nearly 3 years. The smell hit her immediately. Antiseptic, coffee, warm laundry from pediatric recovery rooms. For a moment, emotion clogged her throat so hard she couldn't breathe. A nurse passing the front desk recognized her instantly. Oh my God. Yvette Maya Henderson practically ran toward her. You're back. Yvette laughed softly through sudden tears. Part-time. Maya hugged her tightly. We missed you here. 4 simple words, but they nearly broke Yvette apart, because Travis hadn't made her feel needed in years. Inside the hospital, people smiled when they saw her. Doctors remembered her kindness. Nurses remembered how calm she stayed during emergencies. Yvette had forgotten this version of herself existed. Competent, warm, useful, alive. Around lunchtime, she nearly collided with someone outside the cardiology wing. Yvette. She looked up. Dr. Elias Grant stood there holding patient files against his chest. Tall, calm. Salt and pepper hair at the temples now. Kind eyes that always looked like they actually saw people. Elias had worked alongside her for years before she left nursing, and unlike most men in Travis's world, Elias never spoke over women to prove intelligence. You came back, he said softly. Apparently, a slow smile spread across his face. That's good news for everyone except overworked interns. She laughed for real this time. The sound startled her. Elias noticed. You okay? There was no manipulation in the question, no impatience, no hidden accusation that her emotions were inconvenient. Yvette looked away briefly. I'm getting there. Something in Elias's expression softened immediately. Well, he said gently, it's good to have you back. Simple words again, yet somehow they healed tiny invisible wounds Travis created over years. That night, Yvette came home later than usual. Travis stood in the kitchen pouring wine when she walked in. You're late. His tone wasn't angry exactly, but it wasn't warm either. I picked up another shift. Travis frowned slightly. At the hospital? Yes, you're serious about going back. Yvette set her bag down calmly. I like working. You don't need to. There it was again. That subtle need to keep her dependent. Yvette opened the refrigerator slowly. Maybe I want to. Travis watched her carefully now. Something about her had changed recently, and he felt it even if he couldn't name it yet. She cried less, questioned less, chased him less. And oddly enough, that seemed to bother him more than her sadness ever did. You've been distant lately, he said finally. Yvette almost laughed at the hypocrisy. Instead, she turned toward him calmly. Have I? Yes. Maybe I'm tired too. Travis stared at her for several long seconds. Then his eyes narrowed slightly. Are you seeing someone? The question hit the air like shattered glass. Yvette froze, not because she felt guilty, because the audacity stunned her. This man was sleeping with another woman while accusing her of betrayal simply for reclaiming pieces of herself. Slowly, Yvette stepped closer. Why, she asked softly, Are you? For the first time in years. Travis Price looked nervous. The charity gala took place at the Astor Crown Hotel in Manhattan, where everything glittered with the kind of wealth designed to intimidate people quietly. Crystal chandeliers dripped from vaulted ceilings. Champagne floated endlessly through the ballroom on silver trays. Women wore gowns worth more than most people's rent. And beside Yvette, Travis looked perfectly at home. He adjusted his cufflinks while scanning the crowd with effortless confidence. Navy tuxedo, expensive watch, calm expression sharpened by power. People gravitated toward him instantly. Senior partners shook his hand. Executives laughed too hard at his jokes. Women touched his arm when they spoke. Yvette used to feel proud standing beside him. Tonight she felt like she was attending a funeral no one else knew was happening. You look nice, Travis said as they entered the ballroom. Nice. Not beautiful. Not breathtaking. Just nice. Yvette smiled faintly anyway. Her silver satin gown hugged her figure elegantly, the neckline soft and understated. 3 months ago, she would have chosen something Travis preferred. Tonight, she chose something that made her feel like herself. That alone felt rebellious. The orchestra played softly somewhere near the stage, while wealthy conversations blurred into polished background noise. Then Yvette saw her. Sabrina Coles stood near the bar, laughing at something one of Travis's colleagues said. Tall, sharp, effortlessly confident, and she was wearing emerald green. Yvette's stomach dropped instantly, because 2 Christmases ago Travis had bought Yvette a dress in that exact shade after telling her green makes you unforgettable. The memory hit like poison, as if Sabrina had somehow reached into her marriage and stolen even the colors attached to it. Travis followed Yvette's gaze. For one split second, panic flickered across his face. Tiny, almost invisible. But Yvette saw it. Then he recovered immediately. You okay? He asked carefully. Yvette looked at him, at the man who slept beside her while another woman wore pieces of their life like trophies. And somehow, she smiled. Of course. That seemed to unsettle him more than anger would have. Throughout the evening, Yvette watched the affair unfold in plain sight. Not openly, nothing reckless, but affairs were rarely hidden in body language. Sabrina never approached Travis too quickly. Travis never looked at her too long, but they orbited each other naturally, automatically, like people already emotionally connected. Every glance felt intimate. Every near touch carried history. And once Yvette saw it, she couldn't believe she ever missed it. Mrs. Price. Yvette turned to find Sabrina suddenly standing beside her with a flawless smile. There she was up close, beautiful in a way that looked engineered carefully over time. Perfect makeup, sharp cheekbones, intelligent eyes. The kind of woman who knew exactly what effect she had on people, especially married men, Sabrina Yvette said calmly. Something flashed briefly through Sabrina's expression. Surprise, maybe? She hadn't expected Yvette to know her name. I've heard so much about you, Sabrina said smoothly. Yvette almost laughed. Had she from Travis, the man who called his wife emotional behind closed doors? How nice, Yvette replied softly. Sabrina lifted her champagne glass slightly. Travis says you used to be a nurse. Used to. Another tiny dismissal. Yvette held Sabrina's gaze. I still am. For the first time, Sabrina hesitated slightly. Just enough. Then Travis suddenly appeared beside them, tension visible beneath his polished smile. There you are, he said to Sabrina too quickly, too warmly. Sabrina turned towards him naturally. Familiar, comfortable. God. Yvette wondered how many times they had stood too close together while she waited at home believing she was loved. Richard wants to introduce us to the new investors, Travis told Sabrina. Us, not me, us. Yvette noticed the mistake instantly, so did Travis. A strange silence dropped between them. Then Sabrina recovered first. Well, she smiled lightly at Yvette. It was lovely finally meeting you. Finally, another loaded word, because Sabrina had known about Yvette long before this moment. Probably discussed her, analyzed her, compared herself against her. Yvette watched them walk away together through the ballroom, not touching, never touching, but emotionally connected in a way that made her chest ache. A server passed with champagne, and Yvette grabbed a glass she didn't even want. Suddenly, the room felt too warm, too loud. She escaped toward the balcony overlooking Manhattan. Cold night air hit her skin instantly. Below, the city glittered endlessly, people rushing through streets, taxis flowing like rivers of light, entire lives continuing outside this hotel ballroom where her marriage quietly bled to death beneath designer gowns and corporate smiles. You look like you want to jump. Yvette startled softly. Dr. Elias Grant leaned against the balcony doorway holding a whiskey glass. You came? She asked. Hospital received a donation. He smiled faintly. Apparently, children with heart conditions need wealthy people to feel generous once a year. Yvette laughed softly despite herself. Elias studied her face carefully, then his expression shifted. You okay? There it was again, that genuine concern. No impatience, no irritation, just kindness. Yvette looked away toward the skyline. Do I look that bad? No, Elias said quietly. You look sad. The honesty nearly broke her, because Travis hadn't noticed sadness in her for years unless it inconvenienced him. Elias stepped beside her at the railing. You don't have to answer, he said gently, but are things all right at home? Yvette swallowed hard. Part of her wanted desperately to tell someone, to finally stop carrying the secret alone. But Naomi's voice echoed in her head. Do not react emotionally. Observe. So Yvette only smiled faintly. I'm figuring some things out. Elias nodded slowly like he understood more than she said. Well, he looked out over the city beside her. For what it's worth, you deserve to look happier than you do. The words settled painfully deep inside her chest. Before she could respond, applause suddenly erupted inside the ballroom. Travis stood near the stage giving some kind of speech now, charming the room effortlessly, and beside the stage, Sabrina watched him with open admiration. Yvette felt sick, not because another woman wanted her husband, but because Travis looked more emotionally alive with Sabrina than he ever looked with her anymore. As the gala continued, Yvette noticed whispers beginning around the room. Tiny glances, subtle looks exchanged whenever Travis and Sabrina stood too close together. People suspected. Maybe they already had for months. Humiliation crawled slowly beneath Yvette's skin. How many people pitied her without saying it aloud? Near midnight, Yvette walked down the hallway toward the restroom when she heard voices around the corner. Travis and Sabrina. She stopped instantly. I can't keep doing this forever, Sabrina whispered. You knew the situation. That was before. A pause. Then Travis lowered his voice. After the anniversary, everything changes. Yvette's blood turned to ice. Anniversary. Their anniversary dinner was next month. Sabrina exhaled shakily. You promise, yes. Silence followed, then the unmistakable sound of kissing. Yvette stepped backward slowly before either of them could see her. Her entire body shook violently now. Not from heartbreak anymore, from realization. The anniversary dinner wasn't a celebration. It was an ending. And Travis had already decided she just didn't know it yet. Their anniversary dinner took place exactly 32 days later. 10 years of marriage reduced to a reservation at one of Manhattan's most exclusive restaurants. LeClaire, private rooftop dining, candlelit glass walls overlooking the city skyline, a waiting list 6 months long for normal people. Travis had spared no expense. Of course he hadn't. Appearances mattered more to him than honesty ever had. Yvette stood in front of the bathroom mirror, fastening diamond earrings slowly, while Travis adjusted his tie behind her. You almost ready? He asked. Almost. He walked closer and rested his hands lightly on her shoulders. The gesture looked intimate in the mirror, but Yvette noticed something now she never noticed before. Travis only touched her when he wanted to feel like a good husband. Not because he needed closeness, not because he loved her, because he loved the image of himself loving her. You look beautiful tonight, he murmured. Yvette met his eyes on the reflection. For one dangerous second, she wondered if he felt guilt at all. If somewhere beneath the lies and manipulation, some tiny part of him still understood what he was destroying. But then his phone buzzed, and instinctively, automatically, he let go of her shoulders to check it. There it was again. Priority, not her. Never her. Yvette smiled faintly to herself. A year ago, that tiny movement would have shattered her. Tonight, it only confirmed what she already knew. Ready? She asked calmly. Travis slipped the phone into his pocket quickly. Yeah. The drive into Manhattan felt strangely peaceful. Not because things were okay. Because Yvette had stopped fighting reality. There was freedom in finally seeing the truth clearly. The city glowed outside the car windows while Travis drove one-handed through traffic. You've been different lately, he said suddenly. Yvette looked out at the skyline. Different, how calmer. She almost laughed. Calmer. As if emotional exhaustion eventually looked like peace to people causing the damage. Maybe therapy's helping, she said casually. Travis glanced toward her sharply. You went back, yes. You didn't tell me. You never asked. Silence filled the car instantly. That answer bothered him. Good. Yvette was beginning to realize something fascinating about Travis Price. He didn't actually want her healed. He wanted her manageable, broken enough to depend on him, stable enough not to embarrass him, but independent enough to fully recover. That unsettled him. You think I'm the reason you needed therapy? He asked lightly. There it was, the bait. The invitation to reassure him. Yvette used to rush into those traps immediately. No, of course not. You've done so much for me. I'm just emotional. Tonight she simply shrugged. I think marriage changes people. Travis stared ahead at the road after that. And for the first time in years, Yvette felt the balance between them shifting slightly. Tiny, but real. At the restaurant entrance, cameras flashed softly near the valet line. Corporate executives, influencers, politicians. LeClaire catered to wealthy people who wanted their lives admired publicly. A hostess greeted them instantly. Mr. and Mrs. Price. Right this way. The rooftop looked almost unreal. Candles flickered against glass walls while the Manhattan skyline stretched endlessly beyond them like spilled gold. A violinist played softly near the center terrace. Every table looked cinematic. Performative romance for people rich enough to outsource intimacy into atmosphere. Travis pulled out Yvette's chair politely. Again, the performance. "You okay?" he asked once they sat down. Yvette looked at him carefully. He really didn't know. Even now, even after months of distance, after years of loneliness, after betraying her in every possible way, part of him still believed she would remain exactly where he left her emotionally. That arrogance almost fascinated her now. "I'm fine," she said. Travis relaxed visibly. The waiter poured wine while city lights shimmered behind them. To anyone watching, they looked perfect. Beautiful couple. Elegant anniversary dinner. Successful marriage. Yvette wondered how many women sat smiling beside betrayal every night in this city. The thought made her chest ache unexpectedly. Not just for herself. For all of them. Halfway through dinner, Travis raised his wine glass. To 10 years. Yvette lifted hers slowly. To 10 years, she echoed. He smiled faintly. "You know, despite everything, I think we've built a good life. Despite everything." Interesting choice of words. Yvette tilted her head slightly. "Everything." Travis paused. Then he laughed softly. "You know what I mean. Hard years. Stress. Loss. The baby. Always spoken about vaguely. Carefully. Like grief itself embarrassed him." Yvette stared down into her wine. "I used to think losing the baby destroyed us," she said quietly. Travis stiffened slightly. "Yvette." "No." She looked back up calmly. "I think it just revealed who we already were." For the first time that night, Travis looked genuinely uncomfortable. Good. He should. The waiter arrived with dessert menus before Travis could answer. As they ordered, Yvette noticed movement near the restaurant entrance. Then her blood turned cold. Sabrina. She walked into Leclerc wearing black silk and confidence like armor, and she wasn't alone. 2 executives from Travis's firm accompanied her toward a nearby table. Travis saw her instantly, too. Panic flashed across his face so quickly most people would miss it. Yvette didn't. Of course Sabrina was here. Of course the universe would force this collision tonight. Sabrina noticed them seconds later. And even from across the rooftop, Yvette saw it happen. That tiny emotional reaction. Not surprise. Recognition. Possession. Sabrina recovered fast, smiling politely toward them before sitting down, but the damage was already done. Yvette looked back at Travis slowly. "You invited her, what no? Too quick, too defensive. She works with your firm, Travis. This is your world." His jaw tightened. "It's a coincidence." Maybe it was. Maybe it wasn't. Honestly, Yvette no longer cared, because the deeper wound wasn't Sabrina. It was realizing Travis had emotionally abandoned the marriage long before he physically betrayed it. That was the real heartbreak. Dessert arrived untouched. The tension between them sat heavier than the crystal plates. Then suddenly, a woman approached their table nervously. Mrs. Price. Yvette looked up. Late 20s, blonde, one of the restaurant staff. The woman handed her a sealed envelope quietly. "This was left for you." Travis frowned immediately. "What is that?" "I don't know." But Yvette already felt dread crawling up her spine. She opened the envelope slowly. Inside was a single ultrasound photo. Her hands froze instantly. No note. No explanation. Just the image. And a date printed in the corner from 3 weeks earlier. Across the table, Travis went completely pale. Yvette looked up at him slowly. Really looked at him. And in that horrifying moment, she knew. Sabrina was pregnant. Yvette didn't remember leaving the restaurant. One moment she was staring at the ultrasound photo while Travis sat frozen across from her. The next, cold Manhattan air slammed into her lungs outside Leclerc, while traffic lights blurred through tears she refused to let fall. Behind her, Travis caught up quickly. "Yvette." She kept walking. Yvette, stop. His hand wrapped around her elbow gently but firmly. That touch. Once upon a time it could calm her instantly. Tonight it made her skin crawl. She pulled away sharply. Is she pregnant? The question came out flat, emotionless. That frightened Travis more than screaming would have. He looked around nervously before lowering his voice. Let's not do this out here. A bitter laugh escaped her throat. Out here. As if the location was the problem, not the affair, not the lies, not the possibility that another woman was carrying his child while Yvette still slept beside him every night. She's pregnant, Yvette repeated. Travis ran a hand through his hair. I didn't know she was going to send that. Not a denial, not confusion, not outrage, just damage control. Yvette stared at him beneath the city lights and suddenly saw something clearly. Travis wasn't heartbroken about hurting her. He was terrified of losing control of the narrative. When were you going to tell me? She asked softly. He looked exhausted suddenly. It's complicated. There it was again, the coward's favorite sentence. Complicated. As if betrayal became less cruel when wrapped in sophisticated language. Yvette folded her arms tightly against the cold. How long Travis looked away. That doesn't matter. It matters to me. Silence. Then finally, almost a year. The words sliced through her cleanly. Almost a year. A year of dinners, vacations, anniversary gifts, family holidays. A year of him touching her with hands that belonged somewhere else emotionally. Yvette felt physically ill, and suddenly another memory crashed into her violently. The miscarriage, hospital lights, blood. The doctor speaking softly while Travis held her hand. We'll try again, he whispered afterward while she cried into his chest. We'll have our family. Yvette's breathing became uneven, because now another woman might be carrying the child she spent years grieving. The cruelty of that felt unbearable. Travis stepped closer carefully. Yvette. No. Her voice cracked sharply enough that he stopped moving immediately. People passed them on the sidewalk without noticing their marriage collapsing beside a row of black SUVs and glowing restaurant windows. Yvette looked at him with tears finally burning in her eyes. I buried our baby believing we survived it together. Pain flickered across Travis's face. Real pain, but it came too late. You left me alone in that grief, she whispered. That's not fair. The anger in his voice stunned her. Not guilt. Anger. As if cheating on me wasn't enough. Travis snapped quietly. Now you want to rewrite our entire marriage? Yvette actually stepped backward. Because suddenly she understood something terrifying. Even now, even standing in the wreckage of what he'd done, part of Travis still saw himself as the victim. The realization hollowed her out completely. She looked at him differently after that, not as her husband, not even as the man who betrayed her, but as someone emotionally incapable of truly seeing another person's pain unless it affected him directly. I'm going home, she said quietly. Yvette, wait. No. This time her voice carried steel, and Travis noticed. Something changed in his expression instantly. Fear. Tiny. But real. Because the woman standing in front of him tonight wasn't begging anymore. She wasn't crying hard enough for him to comfort, wasn't chasing reassurance, wasn't collapsing. And men like Travis depended on women collapsing. Please, he said softer now, let's talk tomorrow. Tomorrow. Another delay, another attempt to manage emotions instead of consequences. Yvette shook her head slowly. Then she walked away. Back home, she locked herself in the upstairs bathroom and finally broke apart. Not graceful tears, not cinematic heartbreak, real grief, ugly grief, The kind that leaves you shaking on cold tile floors while trying not to make sounds loud enough for the neighbors to hear. She cried for the baby she lost, for the woman she used to be, for the years she spent shrinking herself to fit inside a marriage that was already dying. But beneath the grief, something else existed now too. Clarity, because the ultrasound photo changed everything. Before tonight, part of Yvette still believed maybe Travis was lost, confused, going through something temporary, but pregnancy made affairs real in ways excuses couldn't survive. Permanent, consequential, a future. Around 2 a.m, her phone buzzed. Naomi Bennett. Yvette answered immediately. "You saw it?" Naomi asked. "Yes." Silence stretched briefly, then Naomi's voice sharpened. "How emotional are you feeling right now?" Yvette almost laughed through tears. "Very. Good. Then do absolutely nothing tonight." Yvette leaned against the bathroom sink weakly. He admitted it. "I assumed he would eventually." Naomi paused. Did he apologize? Yvette thought about it carefully. No, not really. He explained, she whispered. Naomi sighed softly. Men like Travis confuse explanation with accountability. That line hit painfully hard because it was true. Travis always had reasons: stress, pressure, distance. Anything except responsibility. "What do I do now?" Yvette asked. "You keep going." Naomi's tone remained calm, controlled. "We're close, Yvette. Victor found more financial irregularities this week." Yvette wiped tears from her face slowly. What kind? Tax exposure, hidden investment transfers. Enough to create serious problems if necessary. Necessary. The word hung heavily between them. Yvette closed her eyes. "I never wanted revenge." "This isn't revenge," Naomi said quietly. "This is protection." Protection. Yvette realized suddenly how long it had been since anyone framed her survival as important. After hanging up, she sat alone in the dark bathroom for nearly an hour. Then another memory surfaced unexpectedly. 3 months after the miscarriage, Yvette had asked Travis once, "Do you think losing the baby changed me?" He answered without looking up from his laptop, "Yes." She remembered waiting for him to say something comforting after that. Instead, he added, "You used to be lighter." At the time, the comment devastated her. Tonight, it enraged her, because she finally understood something. Travis expected her grief to remain convenient. Beautiful women in pain looked acceptable as long as they still performed happiness properly. But real suffering, real trauma. That annoyed him. Yvette stood slowly and walked toward the bedroom. Travis was asleep already. Or pretending to be. The distance between them in bed suddenly looked enormous. She stared at him for a long moment. At the man she once believed would protect her from anything. Now he was the thing she needed protection from. As Yvette slid carefully beneath the blankets, Travis shifted slightly beside her. Then, half awake, he reached toward her instinctively, not lovingly, habitually. His hand brushed her arm lightly, and for the first time in 10 years, Yvette moved away from him. After the anniversary dinner, Travis changed. Not emotionally, strategically. Yvette noticed it immediately. He became quieter around her, more observant, more careful with his devices. He started taking calls outside, locking his office door, carrying both phones everywhere now instead of leaving the hidden one in the car. He knew something had shifted. He just didn't know exactly what. And uncertainty was beginning to poison him. One Thursday morning, Yvette walked into the kitchen to find Travis already dressed for work, standing motionless beside the coffee machine. "You're up early," she said calmly. Travis looked at her too long before answering. "So are you." The tension between them felt sharp enough to cut skin now. Yvette poured herself coffee slowly. "You okay?" she asked. It was almost funny watching him hear the question differently now. Before, he never noticed concern. Now every sentence sounded suspicious to him. "I'm fine," he replied. "Lie." The word floated invisibly between them. Yvette sat down at the marble island while Travis checked his watch again. Restless, agitated. Cornered animals often moved like that. Victor Hale had updated Naomi 2 days earlier with devastating news. Travis hadn't only hidden money. He had committed tax fraud moving assets through Sabrina's consulting company, sloppy transfers, unreported compensation, offshore positioning attempts. Enough to destroy his reputation permanently if exposed correctly. Yvette remembered Victor saying calmly over lunch, "Your husband built his life assuming no one would ever challenge him." That sentence stayed with her constantly now because it explained everything: the arrogance, the gaslighting, the emotional manipulation. Travis genuinely believed he was untouchable, and maybe until now, he had been. "You're staring at me again," Travis said suddenly. Yvette blinked softly. "Am I? Yes?" Sorry. But she wasn't sorry, because watching him unravel had become strangely fascinating. He kept trying to regain control without understanding he'd already lost it. "I talked to my mother yesterday," he said casually. Of course he did. Diane Price had inserted herself into their marriage for years like a permanent third presence. "And she thinks you've been distant lately." Yvette almost laughed. Interesting. Not devastated, not unstable, not emotional, distant. Even Diane noticed the withdrawal. "She's probably right," Yvette replied. Travis narrowed his eyes slightly. "You don't seem interested in fixing that." There it was, the expectation that Yvette should repair whatever emotional atmosphere existed between them while he continued detonating the marriage privately. For years, she accepted that responsibility automatically. Not anymore. "I'm tired, Travis." His jaw tightened instantly. "Everyone's tired." "No," Yvette said quietly. "Not like this." The silence that followed felt dangerous. Travis hated conversations he couldn't dominate emotionally. "You've changed," he said finally. Yvette looked directly at him. "Maybe I stopped pretending." Something flickered across his face then. Fear again. Tiny, quick, but growing. That afternoon, Yvette met Naomi and Victor inside Naomi's Manhattan office. Rain streaked against the windows while Victor spread financial documents across the conference table. "It's getting worse," he said bluntly. Yvette sat down slowly. How bad? Victor exchanged a glance with Naomi first. "Bad enough that your husband's firm may already suspect something." Yvette's heartbeat sped up. "What do you mean?" Naomi folded her hands neatly. "Blackwell Holdings initiated an internal compliance review last week." Yvette froze. Compliance review. Corporate language for panic. They know about Sabrina. Not necessarily the affair, Naomi clarified, but they're seeing irregularities. Victor slid another paper toward her. "These transfers are impossible to justify cleanly." Yvette stared at the numbers numbly. So this was how empires cracked. Not dramatically, quietly at first. Hairline fractures beneath polished marble. "He's panicking," Naomi said carefully. "You've noticed it too." "Of course." Naomi leaned back slightly. Men like Travis only become attentive when consequences approach. That line hurt because it was true. Travis wasn't suddenly emotionally invested in the marriage again. He was threatened. There was a difference. Yvette looked down at her hands. "I used to think if I loved him enough, he'd soften eventually." Naomi's expression shifted almost imperceptibly, and now Yvette exhaled slowly, Now I think he loved being needed more than he loved me." The room fell quiet, because everyone there knew she was right. Later that evening, Yvette picked up another shift at St. Matthew's Hospital. The pediatric cardiac wing buzzed softly with nighttime exhaustion. Nurses moved quickly through fluorescent hallways, carrying charts and medication trays, while tired parents slept awkwardly in waiting room chairs. Real life. Real pain, not the polished cruelty of corporate dinners and hidden affairs. Somehow the hospital grounded her. A little girl named Ava insisted Yvette braid her doll's hair while waiting for post-surgery scans. "You're pretty," Ava announced seriously. Yvette smiled softly. "Thank you. You look sad sometimes, though. Children always saw too much." Before Yvette could answer, Elias Grant walked into the room reviewing charts. "She bullying staff again?" he asked dryly. Ava gasped dramatically. "I'm charming." Elias looked toward Yvette, then paused slightly. "You okay again? Always genuine." Yvette nodded faintly. "Long week?" Elias studied her face carefully. "You don't have to survive everything alone, you know." The words nearly shattered her composure, because Travis spent years making her feel weak for needing emotional support. Yet here was Elias speaking kindness like it cost him nothing. Yvette looked away quickly before emotion showed too clearly. Unfortunately, Travis saw it too later that night. He arrived unexpectedly at the hospital around 10:30 carrying takeout containers, a gesture that once would have melted her. Now it felt performative. "I thought you forgot to eat," he said. Nurses nearby smiled admiringly. Perfect husband bringing dinner to hardworking wife. The image almost made Yvette sick. "That was thoughtful," she said carefully. Travis scanned the hallway subtly. Then his eyes landed on Elias, speaking with another doctor nearby. Something dark crossed his expression instantly. "Grant still works here." Yvette stiffened slightly. "Yes. There it was. Possessiveness. Not because he cherished her, because ownership felt threatened." Elias noticed them and walked over politely. Travis, doctor. The tension between them appeared immediately. Male, territorial, embarrassing. Elias smiled professionally. "Good seeing you again. You too. Lie." Travis didn't like men who made Yvette feel emotionally safe. Probably because deep down he understood the contrast too clearly. "You working late?" Travis asked Yvette. "Yes. I'll wait. You don't have to." His eyes sharpened instantly at that. "I know." Elias looked between them quietly. Then with calm, deliberate timing, he handed Yvette a patient file. "You did good work tonight," he said softly. Such a simple sentence. But Travis's entire posture changed, because compliments from another man highlighted everything he stopped giving her years ago. Elias walked away without another word. Travis stared after him, then finally looked back at Yvette. "Who are you becoming?" The question came out quieter than she expected, not angry, afraid. And suddenly, Yvette realized something important. Travis no longer understood her. The woman who once cried, begged, explained, chased, she was disappearing. Slowly, irreversibly. Yvette held his gaze steadily, then answered the question honestly. "Someone you never bothered to know, and for the first time since she met him." Travis Price looked truly unsettled. The promotion dinner was scheduled for a Friday night in early December. Blackwell Holdings had reserved the entire top floor of the Whitmore Tower Hotel to celebrate Travis Price becoming the firm's newest senior partner. The irony almost made Yvette laugh. A man's career reaching its highest point at the exact moment his entire life was about to collapse. By 6:30 that evening, Manhattan glittered beneath fresh snowfall while Yvette stood alone in the bedroom, fastening the final clasp of her white gown. The dress was elegant, clean lines, open shoulders, sophisticated without trying too hard. 3 years ago, Travis had looked at this same dress hanging in a boutique and said casually, "You're a little old for something that dramatic." Tonight she wore it anyway, and when she looked at herself in the mirror, she finally saw someone Travis could no longer control. Behind her, Travis adjusted his cufflinks near the window. He looked exhausted lately, not physically, internally. His confidence had started cracking in subtle places. Sleepless eyes, shorter temper, constant phone checking. Victor Hale's investigation was tightening around him quietly, and even if Travis didn't know exactly what Yvette knew, he sensed danger. "You look beautiful," he said carefully. The compliment sounded almost sincere this time. Almost. Yvette met his eyes in the mirror. "Thank you." Silence stretched between them. Once upon a time she would have filled it automatically, smoothed it over, protected him from discomfort. Now she simply let him sit inside it. That unsettled him more than arguments ever had. "You've been very distant lately," Travis said finally. Yvette picked up her earrings slowly. "We're going to be late." His jaw tightened faintly. There it was again, the slipping control. He stepped closer behind her. "Can we at least survive tonight without tension survive?" Interesting word choice, like the marriage itself had become something barely alive. Yvette turned towards him calmly. "I'm not the one creating tension, Travis." Something dark flickered across his face. Guilt, anger, fear. Maybe all three. But before he could answer, his phone buzzed. Again. Always. He checked it instantly, and Yvette noticed the panic in his expression before he masked it. "Sabrina." "Of course." "You okay?" she asked softly. Travis locked the screen too quickly. "Fine." "Lie." By the time they arrived at Whitmore Tower, snow blanketed the sidewalks outside, while luxury cars lined the entrance. Inside the ballroom glowed gold beneath towering chandeliers. Executives mingled beside floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Manhattan. Champagne glasses clinked. Jazz floated softly through the air, and everywhere Yvette looked, people admired Travis. "Price, congratulations, well deserved." Men shook his hand like he was already untouchable. Women smiled too warmly. Yvette watched him perform confidence flawlessly while knowing the truth hiding beneath his tailored suit. Fraud, infidelity, manipulation. A strange calm settled over her, because for the first time Travis's charm no longer worked on her at all. Garrett spotted them first. "Well, damn," he muttered when Yvette stepped inside. "You look incredible." Yvette smiled faintly. "Thank you." Diane Price approached seconds later in silver silk and diamonds, and for once, even Diane looked briefly stunned by Yvette tonight. "You certainly made an effort," Diane commented. Yvette held her gaze calmly. "Yes, I did." The answer carried enough steel that Diane blinked slightly. Interesting. People noticed confidence quickest in women they expected to stay small. Across the ballroom, Sabrina stood near the bar in a black velvet dress. Beautiful, polished, nervous. Yvette saw it instantly. Sabrina kept checking her phone, checking Travis, checking exits. The pregnancy had changed things. Affairs felt glamorous until consequences became real. When Sabrina noticed Yvette watching her, something uncomfortable passed between them silently. Not hatred, recognition. Because deep down they both understood the same thing now. Travis Price loved admiration more than either of them. At 8:15, the managing partners called everyone toward the stage. Applause thundered through the ballroom as Travis stepped forward holding a champagne glass. Perfect smile, perfect posture, perfect lie. Yvette stood near the back beside Naomi Bennett, who had arrived quietly 20 minutes earlier, wearing black like a woman attending a funeral. "You ready?" Naomi asked softly. Yvette inhaled slowly. Yes. On stage, Travis began speaking. "I've dedicated most of my adult life to this firm." The room listened attentively, and none of it would have been possible without support. His eyes found Yvette instantly. There it was, the performance. "My wife Yvette." Applause, warm smiles, sympathetic admiration. Travis continued smoothly. "She sacrificed so much for my career. Her strength carried me through every difficult season of my life." Yvette almost felt dizzy hearing it. Strength. He spent years calling her emotional whenever she showed pain. Now suddenly she was strength. Only because an audience existed. Behind every successful man, Travis said with a polished smile, there's usually an extraordinary woman. The ballroom practically melted. People adored this version of him, the devoted husband, the grateful partner, the man who publicly worshipped his wife. And maybe that was the cruelest part. He understood exactly what loving language sounded like. He simply reserved it for public consumption. Travis raised his glass toward Yvette. "To the woman who stood beside me through everything." Applause exploded again. Yvette felt Naomi glance toward her once. "It's time." Slowly, Yvette set down her champagne glass. Then she started walking toward the stage. The room quieted slightly as heads turned. Travis smiled at first, clearly assuming she was joining him for some anniversary-style moment. God. Even now he underestimated her. Yvette stepped onto the stage gracefully in her white gown, while hundreds of eyes followed her. "You want to say something?" Travis asked lightly into the microphone. His smile slipped slightly when she didn't answer immediately. Yvette looked out over the ballroom, at the executives, the investors, the family members, at Sabrina standing frozen near the bar, then finally back at Travis. And calmly, Yvette reached into her clutch. The room held its breath. She pulled out a sealed envelope. Travis's face changed instantly. Not confusion, recognition, fear, real fear. Yvette handed him the envelope quietly. "What's this?" he asked too softly for the microphone, but his hands were already shaking. "Open it," she said. The ballroom had gone completely silent now. Travis slowly pulled out the documents inside. Divorce papers. His entire face drained of color. Gasps rippled faintly through the room. Diane stood up immediately. "Yvette, what is this?" But Yvette never looked away from Travis. "You said I stood beside you through everything," she said calmly into the microphone he still held. Her voice echoed through the ballroom. "And you're right," Travis whispered harshly. "Don't do this here." But Yvette kept speaking. "I stood beside you through grief, through lies, through betrayal." The room froze. Across the ballroom, Sabrina looked like she might faint. Travis's composure cracked visibly now. "Yvette, no." Her voice stayed terrifyingly calm. "You don't get to control this conversation anymore." Then the ballroom doors opened behind them, and Naomi Bennett walked inside carrying another thick folder in her hands. A folder containing every hidden account, every fraudulent transfer, every lie. Travis saw it, and for the very first time in his carefully constructed life, he looked completely terrified. The silence inside the ballroom became suffocating. No music, no conversation, only the faint sound of snow hitting the glass windows overlooking Manhattan while Travis Price stood on stage holding divorce papers with trembling hands. For the first time since Yvette met him, he looked small. "What the hell is this?" Diane demanded sharply from the crowd. Naomi Bennett walked forward calmly in black heels, carrying the thick financial folder like a final verdict. "This," Naomi said evenly, "is documentation regarding hidden marital assets, fraudulent financial transfers, and misconduct relevant to the pending divorce proceedings." Gasps rippled across the ballroom. Several partners from Blackwell Holdings exchanged alarmed looks instantly. Travis finally snapped out of his shock. "This is insane!" His voice cracked slightly. Yvette noticed. Everyone noticed. Naomi remained perfectly calm. "Actually, it's extremely organized." A few nervous laughs escaped somewhere in the crowd before dying quickly. Travis stepped closer to Yvette, lowering his voice harshly. "You're embarrassing yourself." The words hit the air like poison. Even now, even after everything, his first instinct wasn't remorse, it was image protection. Yvette looked at him steadily. "No, Travis," she said softly. "I'm embarrassing you." That landed, hard, because deep down he knew it was true. One of the senior partners approached cautiously. "Travis." "What exactly is going on here, Travis?" Immediately shifted into lawyer mode, controlled breathing, sharper posture, damage management. "My wife is emotionally overwhelmed right now." There it was, the same strategy he'd always used. Make her sound unstable, fragile, irrational. Yvette almost smiled, because she had prepared for this moment for months. Naomi opened the folder calmly and handed copies to two managing partners. "Fortunately," she said evenly, "facts are less emotional than people." The partners began flipping through pages. Their expressions changed almost immediately. Confusion, concern, shock. One of them looked up sharply. "These accounts are real!" Victor Hale stepped forward quietly from the back of the ballroom. "They're very real." Travis's face lost more color, because now the situation had become dangerous in ways even he couldn't manipulate socially. This wasn't just an affair anymore. This threatened money, reputation, career, and corporate America forgave infidelity far faster than financial dishonesty. Sabrina suddenly stood up from her table. "I'm leaving." But before she could escape, one of the female executives near the bar spoke coldly. "Sit down, Sabrina." The humiliation on Sabrina's face was immediate. Yvette watched her carefully. For months, Sabrina had existed like a glamorous fantasy floating above consequences. Now reality had arrived. And reality was ugly. "This is between me and my wife," Travis snapped. "No," Yvette said quietly. "It stopped being private when you involved another woman, and when you moved our money behind my back. Our money, not his." For years, Travis made her feel financially dependent. Now she stood in front of an entire ballroom, reclaiming ownership publicly. Diane marched toward the stage furiously. "This is unbelievable," she hissed at Yvette. "After everything Travis has done for you?" Yvette slowly turned toward her mother-in-law. Something inside her finally stopped being afraid of Diane tonight. "Done for me," she repeated softly. Diane crossed her arms defensively. "He gave you this life. That sentence." That exact sentence had controlled Yvette for years, as if comfort erased cruelty, as if money replaced respect, as if luxury excused betrayal. Yvette stepped closer. "No," she said calmly. "We built this life together." Diane scoffed. "You stayed home, and he stayed married," Yvette replied instantly. The ballroom went dead silent again, because that was the truth nobody wanted to say aloud. Yvette sacrificed her career believing she was protecting a partnership. Meanwhile, Travis used that sacrifice to quietly position himself above her. Garrett suddenly stood up near the back. "Did you really move money through Sabrina's company?" Travis looked at his brother sharply. "Stay out of this." Garrett didn't move. "That's not an answer." Tension exploded across Travis's face, because the support system he relied on was beginning to crack publicly. One of the senior partners closed the financial file heavily. "We need to discuss this immediately." Travis straightened. "There's context you're missing." "There better be another partner," replied coldly. Across the ballroom, Sabrina looked like she might cry. Interesting. Yvette expected satisfaction seeing her suffer. Instead, she felt strangely empty, because suddenly she saw the affair clearly for what it really was. Not romance, not destiny, just selfish people feeding off validation while destroying everyone around them. Travis turned back toward Yvette desperately now. "You couldn't wait until we got home." That word barely meant anything anymore. Yvette stared at him for a long moment, then finally asked the question sitting inside her chest for months. "Did you ever love me?" The ballroom became impossibly still. Even the executives stopped pretending not to listen. Travis blinked hard. "Yvette, no." Her voice sharpened slightly for the first time all night. "Tell the truth. Just once." He looked trapped, cornered, and still calculating. That hurt more than if he'd screamed, because even now honesty didn't come naturally to him. "I did love you," he said finally. Did. Past tense. Yvette felt something inside her settle permanently. Not break, settle, like a door closing quietly forever. "When did you stop?" she whispered. Travis opened his mouth, then closed it again, because there was no answer that wouldn't reveal his cruelty completely. Yvette nodded slowly. "That's what I thought." Sabrina suddenly spoke from across the ballroom. "He told me you were basically separated." Every head turned toward her instantly. Travis looked horrified. "Sabrina, you said she checked out years ago," Sabrina continued shakily. "You said the marriage was dead." Yvette inhaled sharply, not because the words surprised her, because hearing them out loud made the betrayal feel final somehow. Travis stepped toward Sabrina furiously. "Stop talking. No!" Tears filled Sabrina's eyes now. "You don't get to blame me for this." And suddenly, right there in front of everyone, the affair started cannibalizing itself. Beautiful lies collapsing beneath pressure. Yvette watched Travis carefully. For months she thought the opposite of love was betrayal. Now she realized it was entitlement. Travis believed he deserved loyalty from everyone while offering none himself. The realization made him look profoundly pathetic instead of powerful. One of the senior partners approached Travis grimly. "We're suspending tomorrow's announcement pending investigation." The words hit like a gunshot. Travis froze completely. "No!" "It's already escalated beyond personal matters." "No," Travis repeated louder now. "You can't do that." But they could. And they were. Because corporate loyalty disappeared fast when reputation became expensive. Yvette watched the panic spread across his face fully now. Not polished anxiety, real fear. Everything he built was slipping away publicly, and for the first time, he couldn't charm his way out. Travis suddenly turned toward Yvette again. His voice dropped lower. "Rawer, please." The word shocked her, not because he said it, because he finally sounded human. Not superior, not controlled, just scared. "You're destroying my life," he whispered. Yvette stared at him quietly while snow drifted outside the towering windows behind them. Then she answered with devastating calm. "No, Travis." A tear slid down her cheek finally. "You destroyed it yourself." She stepped backwards slowly after saying it, and for the first time in 10 years. Travis Price looked at his wife like he realized he had truly lost her. 3 weeks after the promotion dinner, Travis Price looked like a man being slowly erased. The articles started first. Not front-page scandals, not dramatic headlines. Small financial publications. Corporate whispers. Senior partner promotion delayed amid internal review. Questions raised about Blackwell Holdings' compliance oversight. People in Travis's world understood what those headlines really meant. Blood in the water. By the second week, investors started distancing themselves quietly. Invitations stopped coming. Calls took longer to return. Colleagues who once worshipped him suddenly became professionally cautious. And Sabrina disappeared completely. No public appearances, no gala photos, no social media updates. Victor later confirmed she had hired her own attorney. Smart woman. Yvette sat inside Naomi Bennett's office one snowy afternoon, reviewing final divorce terms while Manhattan blurred gray outside the windows. "You're getting the Connecticut house," Naomi said calmly. Yvette nodded absently. Oddly enough, she no longer wanted it. Too many ghosts lived there now. Naomi studied her carefully. "You're quieter lately." "I'm tired." "No." Naomi leaned back slightly. "You're healing. There's a difference." Healing. The word felt strange, like trying on clothes that didn't quite fit yet. For months, survival consumed everything inside Yvette. Strategy, evidence, endurance. Now the war was ending, and suddenly she had to figure out who existed underneath all the pain. Her phone buzzed softly on the table. Travis. Again. 34 missed calls in 11 days. Voicemails, too. Some angry, some desperate, some heartbreakingly human. Yvette still listened to every single one. Not because she wanted him back, because part of healing meant finally hearing the truth without illusion. The first voicemails sounded defensive. "You're overreacting. You humiliated me publicly. We could have handled this privately." Then came the fear. "My career is collapsing. You don't understand what's happening. I need to talk to you." And finally, the loneliness. "I miss you. I miss home. I miss who we used to be." That was the voicemail that hurt most, because Travis still talked about the marriage like something that happened to him instead of something he destroyed himself. Naomi closed the financial folder carefully. "He wants to meet." Yvette looked up slowly. "You talked to him. He called me 14 times. A humorless laugh escaped Yvette. "That sounds exhausting." It was. Naomi's expression softened slightly. "You don't owe him closure, Yvette." Maybe not. But deep down, Yvette knew there was one final conversation still waiting between them. Not for him, for herself. That evening, she agreed to meet Travis at a quiet restaurant overlooking the Hudson River. Neutral territory, safe territory. By the time Yvette arrived, Travis was already there sitting alone near the windows. And for one shocking second, she barely recognized him. He looked thinner, older somehow. The sharp perfection he once carried so naturally had cracked apart beneath stress and public humiliation. Dark circles shadowed his eyes. His posture sagged slightly. No expensive suit could hide devastation completely. When he saw her walking toward the table, emotion flashed across his face so openly it startled her. Relief, pain, longing. "You came," he said quietly. Yvette sat down across from him calmly. Yes, silence stretched between them while snow drifted outside the restaurant windows. Finally, Travis spoke. "You look good. Interesting. Not beautiful, not emotional, not difficult. Good." Like he was finally seeing her clearly now that she no longer belonged to him. "How are you?" he asked carefully. Yvette almost laughed at the absurdity. After everything, after betrayal and manipulation and destruction, now he wanted emotional intimacy again. "I'm surviving." His eyes dropped briefly. "That's my fault." The admission surprised her, because it sounded genuine. Not polished, not strategic, just true. The waiter approached briefly before sensing tension and retreating quickly with only water menus left behind. Travis rubbed his hands together nervously. "I know I don't deserve forgiveness. Yvette said nothing. I know I ruined everything. Still, she stayed quiet, because for once she wanted him to sit inside honesty without rushing to comfort him out of it. Travis swallowed hard. I was stupid. There it was, the line she once dreamed of hearing, the apology, the recognition, yet strangely, it no longer healed anything. Yvette looked at him steadily. No, she said softly. Travis blinked. You weren't stupid. Pain flickered across his face instantly because he already knew what came next. You were cruel. The words settled heavily between them, and unlike every other time in their marriage, Travis didn't argue, didn't defend himself, didn't gaslight her into doubting her pain, because finally there was no room left for lies. A tear slid down his face unexpectedly. I never meant to hurt you this badly. Yvette stared at him quietly. That's the problem, Travis. He looked up. You only think about consequences after damage is already done. The truth hit him visibly. For years, Travis treated people like emotional resources instead of human beings. Validation, comfort, admiration, support. And when those resources finally broke under the weight of his selfishness, he acted shocked. I loved you, Yvette whispered suddenly. The vulnerability in her own voice surprised her. Travis closed his eyes briefly. I know. No. Tears filled her eyes now, too. I really loved you. That hurt him more than anger ever could, because deep down, Travis finally understood the scale of what he destroyed. Not just a marriage, someone who would have chosen him forever. I hate myself for this, he admitted quietly. Yvette believed him. That was the tragic part. Some people only develop empathy after consequences force it into them. But by then, the damage is already irreversible. The waiter returned awkwardly to ask about dinner. Neither of them ordered much. Conversation came slowly after that, fragments of grief scattered across candlelight and snowfall. Then eventually, Travis asked the question sitting between them all night. Is there someone else, Elias? The name flickered briefly through Yvette's mind. His kindness, his steadiness, the way he listened without making her pain feel inconvenient. But Yvette shook her head slowly. No. Travis looked relieved for half a second, then ashamed of that relief immediately afterward. I think Yvette said quietly, I'm finally learning how to belong to myself again. That sentence broke something inside him completely, because Travis suddenly realized another man wasn't the real threat. Healing was. A healed woman no longer tolerated what once destroyed her. Outside the restaurant windows, snow continued falling softly over the river. Travis stared at her like he was trying desperately to memorize someone already leaving. Was there ever a chance for us, he asked finally. Yvette thought about it honestly, about the early years, the tiny apartment above the bakery, the nights they laughed until 2 a.m, the version of Travis who once seemed capable of tenderness. Then she thought about the manipulation, the affair, the years spent shrinking herself just to keep peace inside the marriage. And slowly, she realized something devastating. The man she loved had existed partly in her hope, not just reality. Yvette looked at Travis one final time across the candlelit table, then answered gently, there was. Hope flickered painfully across his face until she finished speaking, but you kept choosing yourself over us. And this time, he had no argument left at all. The divorce was finalized on a rainy Tuesday in March. No dramatic courtroom breakdowns, no screaming, no cinematic last-minute confessions, just signatures, paperwork, and the quiet death of a marriage that had been rotting long before either of them admitted it aloud. Yvette stood outside the Manhattan courthouse holding a black umbrella while cold rain streaked across the sidewalks. Naomi Bennett stepped beside her. "Well," Naomi said softly, "you're officially free." Free. The word felt heavier than expected. Not exciting, not triumphant, just strange. Because after spending years emotionally orbiting another person, freedom almost felt disorienting at first. Yvette looked up at the gray skyline. I thought I'd feel happier." Naomi smiled faintly. "Happiness usually comes later." She adjusted her coat. "First comes peace." Peace. Yvette realized she hadn't truly experienced peace in years. Not real peace. Not the kind where your nervous system stops waiting for disappointment. A black SUV pulled away from the curb nearby. Travis's driver. He hadn't come inside the courthouse, probably because public humiliation already destroyed enough of his pride. Or maybe because seeing Yvette finally walk away officially would have broken him completely. Yvette no longer knew which possibility hurt more. Naomi touched her arm gently before leaving. "You did something very difficult," she said. Yvette looked at her quietly. "No," she answered after a long pause. "I survived something very difficult." Naomi's expression softened immediately. Then she nodded once and disappeared into the rain. 3 months later, Yvette moved into a high-rise apartment overlooking the Upper West Side. Smaller than the Connecticut house. Smaller than the life she used to perform. But somehow, it felt more honest. Morning sunlight filled the apartment differently. Cleaner somehow. The room smelled like fresh coffee and books instead of tension and silence. For the first time in years, Yvette decorated a space without wondering whether Travis would approve. Soft cream furniture, fresh flowers near the windows, artwork she liked instead of artwork that looked expensive. Tiny choices, tiny freedoms, yet each one stitched another piece of her back together. At St. Matthew's Hospital, she returned to full-time nursing by early spring. The work exhausted her physically, but emotionally it saved her, because children recovering from heart surgery didn't care about social status, or luxury cars, or corporate scandals. They cared whether someone held their hand during scary moments, and Yvette was very good at that. One afternoon, Maya caught her laughing at the nurse's station and nearly dropped a stack of charts. "There she is," Maya whispered dramatically. Yvette blinked. "What, that laugh?" Maya smiled softly. "I haven't heard it in years." The comment hit unexpectedly hard because Yvette realized something terrifying. She hadn't heard it either. Not really. Not naturally. Not without forcing it for appearances. Later that evening, Elias Grant found her sitting alone in the hospital cafeteria, eating terrible soup from a paper cup. "That looks medically dangerous," he said, sitting across from her. Yvette smiled immediately. "That's because it is." Elias loosened his tie slightly and studied her face for a moment. "You look lighter." The exact opposite of what Travis once told her after the miscarriage. "You used to be lighter." Funny how different men notice different things. "I think I am," Yvette admitted quietly. Elias nodded like he already knew. There was never pressure with him, no manipulation, no performance, just calm, safe. For months, he never pushed her toward romance. Never tried becoming the hero rescuing the broken woman, and somehow that kindness meant more than grand gestures ever could. "You want to get dinner sometime?" he asked finally. Simple. Direct. No games. Yvette looked down at her coffee cup thoughtfully. Part of her still feared relationships now, feared disappearing inside another person again. Elias seemed to notice the hesitation immediately. "You can say no," he said gently. "I'm not asking you to become anything before you're ready. God." The emotional maturity in that sentence alone almost made her cry. Yvette looked up slowly. "I'd like dinner." His smile afterward was small, real, and somehow that felt infinitely safer than charm ever had. A week later, Yvette stopped at a quiet cafe after therapy. Rain tapped softly against the windows while people typed on laptops and indie music hummed overhead. She stood in line ordering tea when she noticed someone sitting alone near the back corner. Travis. For a second, neither of them moved. He looked up slowly from his coffee cup, and Yvette felt the past hit her chest all at once. 10 years, love, grief, betrayal. Everything condensed into one quiet moment between strangers who once shared a life. Travis stood carefully. He looked healthier than before. Still sad, though, like someone learning too late that regret has no reverse button. "Hi," he said softly. "Hi." Awkward silence stretched between them. Then Travis glanced toward the empty chair across from him. "Do you want to sit?" Yvette hesitated briefly, then nodded. They spoke politely at first. Safe subjects, work, the weather, hospital stories, like people gently stepping around emotional landmines buried beneath the conversation. Then eventually Travis looked at her quietly and asked, "Are you happy?" Yvette thought about it honestly. Not performative happiness, not Instagram happiness, real happiness. The kind built slowly after surviving devastation. "I think I'm becoming someone I like again," she answered. Emotion flashed across Travis's face instantly. Loss. Deep, irreversible loss. Because he finally understood something. The woman sitting across from him now, she would have loved him well forever if he hadn't destroyed her trust, and he would spend the rest of his life knowing that. "I'm glad," he whispered. Yvette believed him. That was the tragedy of growth arriving too late. Outside the cafe windows, Manhattan moved endlessly beneath soft spring rain. People rushed past, carrying umbrellas and unfinished stories. Yvette looked at Travis one final time, not with hatred, not with longing, just acceptance. The pain between them no longer controlled her. And maybe that was the real ending. Not revenge, not victory. Freedom. "I should go," she said softly. Travis nodded immediately, though disappointment flickered across his face. "Yeah." Yvette stood slowly. Then Travis asked quietly, "Do you ever miss us?" The question lingered painfully between them. Yvette smiled sadly. "I miss who I thought we were." That answer shattered him more gently than cruelty ever could. But it was honest. And finally, honesty was all she had left to give him. Yvette picked up her coat and walked toward the cafe door. This time she didn't look back. Almost a year after the divorce, Yvette finally opened the last box from Connecticut. It had been sitting untouched in the corner of her apartment for months. Winter clothes, old photo albums, pieces of a life she no longer knew what to do with. Outside her Manhattan windows, late autumn rain painted silver streaks across the glass while jazz played softly from the kitchen speaker. The apartment smelled like cinnamon tea and clean linen. Home. Real home. Not the kind built for appearances, the kind built for breathing. Yvette sat cross-legged on the hardwood floor and slowly pulled items from the box one by one. A framed beach photograph from Cape Cod, a hospital bracelet from her pregnancy, old anniversary cards written in Travis's sharp, elegant handwriting. For a moment, grief brushed against her chest again. Not devastating grief, just memory. Soft now, manageable. Healing had changed the texture of pain. Then near the bottom of the box, her hand touched cold metal. Yvette froze instantly. The second phone. Travis's hidden phone. She stared at it silently for several seconds while rain whispered against the windows. God, this little object had detonated her entire life. Or maybe not. Maybe it had simply exposed the explosion already happening underneath the surface. Slowly, Yvette picked it up. The battery was dead. Of course it was. Like the marriage itself, she almost laughed at the symbolism. After plugging it into the charger beside the couch, she watched the black screen slowly flicker back to life. A strange calm settled over her. Months ago, this phone felt like poison. Now it just felt sad. When it powered on completely, hundreds of old notifications appeared instantly. Missed calls, unread messages, fragments of deception frozen in time. Yvette opened the message thread with Sabrina first. Her stomach tightened briefly, not from jealousy anymore, from witnessing how empty the affair truly was beneath all the fantasy. The messages blurred together quickly. Complaints about work, secret hotel plans, flirting, arguments. Promises Travis never intended to keep. At one point, Sabrina wrote, "Sometimes I think you love being wanted more than you love me." Yvette stared at the sentence for a long time. Because Sabrina understood him eventually, too. Maybe all women who loved Travis reached the same painful conclusion eventually. He mistook admiration for intimacy. Further down, another message stopped her completely. From Travis. "Yvette wouldn't survive without me." The words hit strangely now. Not painfully, just revealing. For years, Travis genuinely believed she needed him to exist. And maybe once, Yvette believed it too. That realization felt both heartbreaking and liberating. She continued scrolling. More lies, more manipulation, more emotional performances carefully tailored for different women. And suddenly Yvette noticed something tragic. Travis sounded almost identical in both relationships. The same charm, the same promises, the same emotional mirroring, like he didn't actually know how to love uniquely. Only how to perform connection well enough to receive devotion. Yvette locked the phone slowly. Then she looked around her apartment. At the bookshelves she chose herself. The flowers Elias brought last weekend. The soft yellow lamp glowing beside the couch. The peace. Real peace. Not silence filled with resentment. Not emotional walking on eggshells. Peace. Her phone buzzed gently beside her. "Elias, dinner still on for Friday, or are you abandoning me for better soup options?" Yvette laughed softly. Real laughter. Easy laughter. She typed back, "I'm considering your soup opinions very carefully." Seconds later, cruel woman. Warmth spread through her chest. Not overwhelming passion, not obsession. Just safety. Steadiness. The kind of love that didn't require disappearing to maintain it. A few days later, Elias took her to an art exhibit downtown. Modern photography, soft music, wine glasses clinking quietly through crowded galleries. At one point, Yvette stopped in front of a black and white photograph of a woman standing alone in the ocean. Elias studied it beside her. "What do you think?" he asked. Yvette looked at the image carefully. "She looks lonely." Elias tilted his head slightly. I think she looks free." The answer stayed with her all night, because freedom and loneliness sometimes looked identical at first, but only one of them let you breathe fully. After the exhibit, they walked through Manhattan under cold city lights while taxis rushed past glowing storefronts. Elias reached for her hand carefully, not possessively, not automatically, like he understood touch should always feel chosen. Yvette intertwined her fingers with his, and for the first time in years, affection didn't feel like performance. Near midnight, she returned home alone. Elias had kissed her gently downstairs before leaving for an early hospital shift. No pressure, No manipulation, just warmth. Inside the apartment, Yvette glanced toward the second phone still resting on the kitchen counter. The final artifact of the worst year of her life. Slowly she walked toward it, picked it up, and carried it to the trash chute at the end of the hallway. For one brief second she held it above the opening. The old version of herself flickered through her mind. The woman who cried quietly in bathrooms, the woman who begged to be chosen, the woman who thought loyalty meant enduring anything. Yvette closed her eyes. Then she let go. The phone disappeared into darkness with a hollow metallic sound. And strangely, that was the moment the marriage finally died inside her completely. Not during the affair, not at the gala, not in court, here, now. Alone in a quiet hallway while choosing herself fully for the first time. Later that night, Yvette sat in the back seat of a taxi crossing Manhattan Bridge, while the city glowed around her endlessly. Rain blurred the skyline into streaks of gold and silver outside the windows. The driver played soft Sinatra through old speakers, and for the first time in a very long time, Yvette felt no urge to look backward. Not toward Travis, not toward betrayal, not toward the woman she used to be. Because healing wasn't becoming who you were before pain. It was becoming someone stronger after surviving it. Yvette rested her head lightly against the taxi window while the city lights reflected across the glass. And somewhere deep inside her chest, a truth settled quietly into place at last. The worst thing Travis Price ever did wasn't cheating on her. It was making her believe she was difficult to love. And the best thing Yvette ever did was refusing to believe him anymore. Sometimes the deepest betrayal is not being cheated on. It's slowly being convinced that your pain is too much, that your needs are inconvenient, that your love should survive disrespect indefinitely just to prove loyalty. Yvette's story reminds us that emotionally manipulative relationships rarely begin with obvious cruelty. They begin with small silences, small dismissals, tiny moments where one person keeps shrinking while the other keeps taking more space. And over time, many kind people mistake endurance for love. But love should never require you to abandon yourself. Real love does not punish vulnerability. It does not make you beg for basic kindness. It does not weaponize your grief, your loyalty, or your dependence against you. And no amount of history, marriage, money, or memories can make a relationship healthy if respect no longer exists inside it. One of the most powerful things about Yvette's journey is that her victory did not come from revenge alone. It came from rediscovering her own worth after years of forgetting it. She stopped measuring herself through Travis's inability to love her correctly. She stopped fighting to be chosen by someone committed to misunderstanding her. And the moment she chose herself fully, she became free. Sometimes healing is not loud. Sometimes healing looks like sleeping peacefully again, laughing naturally again, walking away without needing the last word. And sometimes the strongest thing a woman can say is, "I deserved better all along." If this story touched you in any way, let us know in the comments. What part of Yvette's journey hit you the hardest? Have you ever had to rebuild your self-worth after loving the wrong person? And if you enjoy emotional stories about healing, betrayal, resilience, and powerful new beginnings, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and join us for more stories that remind people they are never too broken to start over.